Something is seriously broken in how the world was explained to you. They told you wars just happen, alliances are mutual, and geopolitics is for elite experts. Nonsense. The truth? Everything runs on logic, and more importantly, in layers. There are 3 geopolitical levels that shape decisions, conflicts, and power shifts. If you don't understand them, you're basically playing a game without knowing the rules. While most people watch conflicts unfold in confusion, a few read between the lines like chess masters. They know every military strike, economic sanction, or alliance fits into a broader pattern across local, regional, and global scales. And once you decode that pattern, the news stops being noise. It becomes signal. This lesson isn't just about knowing more, it's about thinking better. And you don't need a degree to get there, just the courage to question what no one explained before. Because once you understand geopolitical levels, you'll never see world events the same way again. You know that feeling that the world keeps spinning, but no one ever explained the rules of the game? Exactly. Understanding geopolitics means decoding that giant board. At its core, geopolitics is the study of power relations between territories, where physical and human geography set the stage, and countries move as the players. But don't worry. You don't need to be a diplomat to understand this. You just need to see how location, resources, and even climate silently influence major decisions. Take the South China Sea conflict, for instance. That's not just a regional issue. It's where maritime versus land powers are wrestling for dominance. China, with its land-based force, challenges the naval presence of the U.S. See what's happening? This is where centripetal and centrifugal forces come into play. One pulls territories together under central control, while the other rips them apart. The war in Ukraine? Yes, that too. Now think about this. Once you learn how to identify the interests behind alliances, disputes, and conflicts, your perspective completely shifts. But you've got to go beyond the headlines. Books like The Revenge of Geography by Robert D. Kaplan are a great start. And once you dive deeper, you'll start to see how everything ties into the 3 levels of geopolitics. But we'll get to that next. When a war breaks out, the media rushes to show tanks, explosions, and speeches. But the real war started long before, in the silence of maps, in the frictions between rogue states and quasi-states, in those fault lines we call Shatterbelts. These are regions always on edge because they sit where rival powers collide. It's like a geopolitical fault zone. One shake and the whole thing crumbles. Syria is a textbook example. It's a battleground for Russia, the US, Iran, Turkey, and various armed groups. The physical and human geography of the region is messy: desert terrain, colonial borders, and deep ethnic divides. A perfect storm for conflict, where centripetal and centrifugal forces play a tug-of-war. The cruel part? Many times, the chaos is sustained on purpose to stop any one power from gaining too much control. And once you notice the pattern, it's everywhere. Some regions are designed to stay unstable. That's not a coincidence. They act as buffer states, weak on purpose, yet critical for maintaining balance between bigger powers. Wars in these zones don't happen, they're triggered. And to understand where they'll erupt next, you have to zoom out to how the world is layered and scaled. If you're only watching the news, you're missing the why behind the what. The truth is, the world operates through 3 geopolitical levels: local, regional, and global. Think of it like an onion. The more layers you peel back, the deeper it goes. Take the Mexico border crisis. It's not just a local problem, it connects to regional drug trafficking networks and global immigration treaties. And each level constantly influences the others. At the local level, it's about land, identity, and culture. Like Catalonia trying to break away from Spain. Regionally, it's Saudi Arabia versus Iran in the Middle East. Globally, it's maritime versus land powers, the US and China vying for control over ecumenical and commercial zones where the world's wealth flows. Each layer shifts the others like gears in a machine. When these layers overlap, you get real geopolitical combustion. Look at Ukraine. It's not just two countries at war. It's a collision of Russia, land power, NATO, maritime power, and the centripetal and centrifugal forces within Ukraine itself. There's a method to the madness, but if you want to spot who's pulling the strings, you'll need to understand how states project symbols and authority. Every country has two centers, one that tells its story and one that pulls the strings. That's the difference between a historical center and a political center. The first preserves culture, the second executes power. Take Russia. Moscow is the political command, but the historical soul lies in Kiev, cradle of the Slavic world. This is where geopolitics gets symbolic and dangerous. This gap isn't just geographic, it's strategic. Brazil has Salvador as its colonial birthplace, but Brasilia as its political brain. The U.S. has Boston and Philadelphia as icons of freedom, but Washington runs the show. Why does it matter? Because when a country wants to justify political actions, it often revives its historical center as a symbol, giving moral weight to the political center's decisions. This is the strategy behind many national projects. Think of modern Turkey eyeing Istanbul's legacy while operating from Ankara. This split is where physical and human geography meet political narratives. But when these centers clash or fall into contested hands, things fall apart. And that's when invisible boundaries become battle lines. Some places look neat on the map, but those lines are fiction, especially in Shatterbelts, regions torn apart by constant geopolitical friction. These are the front lines of ideological, ethnic, or religious conflict. And here's the kicker. The more chaotic the territory, the more valuable it becomes to the powers that want control without commitment. The Middle East is the classic case. But don't forget the Balkans, where centripetal and centrifugal forces still create fragile coalitions and age-old tension. That's where buffer states come in, weak by design, but crucial to balancing rival powers. They hold the line until the pressure breaks them. And when they fall, the shock waves don't stop at the border. It's like tossing a stone in a pond. A local conflict quickly ripples into a global crisis. That's why understanding Shatterbelts isn't about maps. It's about the interests weaving through them. But to track those interests, you've got to understand where life is pulsing and where commerce meets control. If you want to know where power lives, look where life thrives. Ecumenical and commercial zones are regions where population, trade, and infrastructure intersect. These are urban hubs, transport corridors, and key ports. And guess what? Controlling them means controlling the flow of people, money, and influence. Think of Shanghai, New York, Istanbul, Rotterdam. These are hotspots of connection, vital to the global economy. That's why maritime versus land powers always fight for dominance there. Sea power enables trade, land power blocks access. It's a permanent tug-of-war between openness and control. And don't forget, physical and human geography can flip the script in an instant. One earthquake, drought, or rising sea level can shut down entire systems. These zones are vulnerable and highly valuable. So who's shaping strategy around them? The answer lies not just in governments, but in who teaches who about power. While empires clash over borders, there's another war raging quietly. The war over knowledge. Geopolitical education in the global south is severely lacking. And no, that's not a coincidence. Those who control information control interpretation, and those who control interpretation shape the world. Why do so many people only learn about buffer states or centripetal forces as adults, if ever? Because uninformed citizens are easier to influence. Meanwhile, major powers train their youth to think critically, read maps like texts, and question narratives. That's how you build a population of players, not pawns. But things are shifting. New books, podcasts, YouTube channels, they're giving voice to fresh perspectives. Want to start? Read Prisoners of Geography by Tim Marshall, or follow strategic analysts who simplify complex themes. Once you master the patterns, you don't need permission to think like a strategist. And that opens a whole new level of understanding. Let me ask you, how many life decisions have you made without realizing you were a piece in someone else's game? How many times did something feel like bad luck when it was really the outcome of global power shifts? That ends now. This isn't just knowledge, it's ammunition. So, what will you do with it? Will you start seeing news through a geopolitical lens? Will you research your country's strategic position? Will you question overly friendly global speeches? That's what real thinking looks like. Strategic thinking means asking, who gains from this? If this class opened your eyes, you're already ahead of the curve. Now it's time to go deeper. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share this with someone else who needs to wake up. Because the world is moving fast, and those who stay still become pawns. But those who read the code become players.